Imagine paying the equivalent of a luxury home, not for land, not for gold, not for a business, but for a single flower bulb. That's not a metaphor. That's not an exaggeration. That actually happened. In 17th century Holland, ordinary people, merchants, craftsmen, and tradesmen sold everything they owned to buy tulip bulbs. Entire fortunes were made and lost in a matter of weeks. And then, almost overnight, it all collapsed. This is the story of Tulip Mania, the world's first recorded financial bubble, and what it reveals about human nature, greed, and why we never seem to learn from history's most expensive mistakes. To understand why tulips drove an entire nation to financial madness, you first have to understand how special they were. It's the early 1600s. The Dutch Republic is the wealthiest nation on Earth. Amsterdam is the center of global trade. Ships are returning from the Far East loaded with spices, silk, and exotic goods. The Dutch are flush with cash and looking for ways to spend it. Then, sometime around 1593, a botanist named Carolus Clusius brings something extraordinary to the Netherlands. Tulips, originally from the Ottoman Empire, had made their way to Vienna, where Clusius managed the emperor's gardens. When he took up a post at Leiden University, he brought his prized bulb collection with him. Unlike anything Europeans had ever seen, tulips came in vivid, flame-like streaks of color: red and white, purple and yellow. No two were exactly alike. They became the ultimate status symbol. Having rare tulips in your garden meant you were wealthy, sophisticated, and powerful. But here's where things get interesting. Some tulips developed a peculiar condition, a virus, actually, that caused their petals to develop wild, intricate color patterns. These so-called broken tulips were impossibly beautiful and almost impossible to predict or reproduce. You could plant a bulb and have no idea what color flower would emerge. That unpredictability made them priceless, or so people believed. By the 1630s, tulips had moved far beyond gardens. They had become an investment. Traders began buying and selling tulip bulbs the way we trade stocks today. Prices started climbing, then climbing faster, then faster still. At the peak of Tulip Mania, in the winter of 1636 and early 1637, a single bulb of the most prized variety, the Semper Augustus, sold for more than 10 times a skilled craftsman's entire annual salary. Some bulbs changed hands for the price of a canal house in Amsterdam. People weren't buying tulips to plant them. They were buying them to sell them to the next person at a higher price. Sound familiar? To make matters wilder, a futures market developed. People were buying and selling tulip bulbs that hadn't even been dug up yet, contracts on flowers still in the ground. You could buy a promise of a tulip bulb in the spring and sell that promise before the bulb ever saw daylight. This allowed almost anyone to participate. You didn't need the bulb in your hand. You just needed the contract. And so people with no experience in trading, no understanding of what they were buying, flooded in. The taverns of Amsterdam transformed into trading floors. Deals were struck over drinks. Everyone had a story about someone who'd made a fortune overnight. Nobody wanted to be the person who missed out. Then came February 1637. On what seemed like an ordinary auction day in Haarlem, sellers showed up expecting the usual frenzy of buyers. But the buyers didn't come. Nobody is entirely sure why. Perhaps too many people had already spent beyond their means. Perhaps someone simply decided the prices were insane. Whatever the trigger, word spread fast. Prices dropped. Panic set in. Everyone tried to sell at once. And when everyone is selling and nobody is buying, prices don't just fall, they collapse. Within days, tulip bulbs that had been worth fortunes were worth almost nothing. Contracts were left unfulfilled. Merchants who had bet everything were ruined. Courts were flooded with disputes that took years to resolve. A single bulb of the Semper Augustus, once worth the price of a mansion, could now be had for the cost of an onion. The Dutch government eventually stepped in, ruling that futures contracts could be canceled for a small fee, a fraction of the original price. It didn't help much. The damage was done. Many who had staked their savings on tulips faced significant losses, and the wealthiest nation on earth learned a very expensive lesson about the difference between value and price. Now here's the part of the story that should make you uncomfortable. Because Tulip Mania didn't end in 1637. It just changed costumes. The same pattern, irrational enthusiasm, skyrocketing prices, a desperate fear of missing out, followed by sudden collapse, has repeated itself over and over throughout history. The South Sea Bubble in 1720, the railroad mania of the 1840s, the dot-com bubble of the late 1990s, the housing market collapse of 2008, the crypto booms and busts of the 2010s and 2020s. Every single time, the story is the same. An asset becomes exciting. Prices rise. People who got in early make real money. Others rush in, not because they understand the asset, but because they're afraid of being left behind. Prices detach from reality. And then, eventually, reality catches up. The tulip didn't have any real value beyond its beauty. But at the height of the mania, people convinced themselves the price would keep rising forever. They confused the excitement of the crowd for a fundamental truth about worth. The question isn't whether financial bubbles will happen again. They will. The question is, when the next one comes, will you recognize it? Or will you be the person paying the price of a house for a flower? The Dutch tulip mania lasted only a few years, but the lessons it left behind have lasted nearly 4 centuries, and counting. If you found this story fascinating, there's plenty more where it came from. The Wealth Chronicle is dedicated to uncovering the untold stories behind the world's greatest financial moments. The fortunes made, the empires lost, and the decisions that shaped the world we live in today. Subscribe so you never miss a story, and leave a comment below. Would you have bought the tulip?